let's discuss Pixar's drama and conflict. I guess we kind of touched on it, which is basically the drama and the conflict is throwing two opposites together. And they're, well, let me see. So Buzz and Woody, Buzz is delusional. So he doesn't have any wants, really. In the first, he's just, I guess he's just delusional. He doesn't even know he's a toy.
Yeah, that's right. But the thing that happens is Woody very clearly, as we all remember, tells him, "You are a toy," right? And then it becomes this whole thing about Buzz either protecting that or later accepting that. There's that moment later on where he tries to fly when they're already at Sid's house and he falls. And I even remember there's like a Randy Newman specific song playing at that moment. And he needs to deal with that because until he deals with that, he and Woody can't work together. And although he and Woody can't work together, Andy's room as an ecosystem will never function. So You're right in the sense that because he's not the protagonist, like he doesn't have a clear want, but he has a problem.
Oh, he's got stuff to deal with. He's got issues. He's working through stuff. There's no question that Buzz is working through stuff, and they're so brilliantly done in that first movie is when Buzz goes to fly the first time, because he bounces and everything, he actually flies. So the delusion continues, and that's such a fascinating analogy for life, because a lot of times the story that we tell ourselves for protection, for whatever, that thing is, for our ego, a lot of times things happen in our life that feed into that. And you see, I am a genius. You see, I am this, or I am that. But when that facade comes crashing down, that's what Buzz has to deal with. He has to wait a minute. My identity has been Buzz Lightyear, this astronaut, action astronaut. And I'm like, no, I'm just a toy. That is so powerful. That theme is so powerful, among other themes that are so powerful in that movie.
I think almost all stories, and in real life, all growth, start from a moment like that. Start from a moment where your image of yourself or your set of values fail you. And to use a metaphor from Inside Out that I think is helpful for writers, like O'Reilly has all these islands of personality, right? He has Honesty Island, Family Island, and I think a good script or a good story starts when one of those islands is destroyed. When a character has one of their islands destroyed, and now they need either to rebuild it or find a new one and figure that out. And if we talked about drama and conflict, I think Pixar does a great job of making sure that all of their conflicts offer, on one hand, an opportunity for destruction. You could lose everything you had, but also an opportunity for construction where, you might not live your life the way you have until now, but you'll create something new, something stronger, right? And they always find these great visual ways to show, I think I call this book like, at first there's a flaw in the world, and then at the end they always show the new world and how it's better. In Inside Out, if you remember at the end, her control panel gets so much bigger. And right?
And they're mixed, and the memories are mixed together.
Exactly. So you're like, oh, okay, Riley won't always be happy. We lost that battle, but look at all the emotional riches she will now be able to experience.
I think that, if we can get a little psychoanalytic on screenwriters, I mean, for myself, I could talk about myself, but I've seen other screenwriters and filmmakers as well go through this, which would they have this image of themselves, whether that be, I'm going to be the next Tarantino, I'm going to be the next Sorkin, I'm going to be the next big writer, and they start tailoring their writing around that idea. And when that idea doesn't germinate because the reality sets in, because they're just like, you're trying to be the next Tarantino. I'm like, well, I'm sorry. There's no one's ever going to be the next Tarantino, because you've got to be the best you that you can be. Because Tarantino became who he is because he is true to himself. He understands that he did not try to imitate not one person. He imitates everybody. he imitates everybody. He does it so masterfully that we just go, well, okay, that's fine. But I think for me, I don't know, for my whole 20s, every time a certain year would go by, you would go, oh, it's 23. That's when Orson Welles made Citizen Kane. Well, I guess I'm not going to be Orson Welles. And then you hit 27. Oh, that's when Spielberg made Jaws. Yeah. Okay. Oh, 30.
Chazelle winning an Oscar for best director at 28.
Exactly. So you start going through all those milestones, and as you get older, you start realizing that those are not realistic. Not because you can't do it, because that's not your path. Those are outliers. Those are complete outliers. Those are magical moments, and that's a lot of times I feel that so many filmmakers and screenwriters get caught up in the lottery ticket and not in just being themselves. And when you get comfortable with being yourself, which is like what most of these Pixar characters do, at the end, they get comfortable with themselves. They break the illusions of who they thought they were. Like Woody thought he had to be something. But at the end, he changes. All of them change. Nemo, Nemo's dad, and everybody changes to finally going, oh, this is who I really am, as opposed to the illusion. And that's an extremely painful process in life. Extremely painful. It could be from when you're a kid and you think you're the hot shit of the moment, and the girl just rejects you. Boom. Crash. That island that you were talking about is destroyed very, very quickly. And that is the process that you go through life. But I think in a creative standpoint, I think so many of us have these illusions. And I think we grab onto them. And please let me know what you think. You grab onto these illusions, you grab onto these kind of constructs as a defense mechanism.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think someone talked about the difference between fixed mentality and growth mentality.
Right.
You know that, right? So fixed mentality is, I'm talented, I'm smart, I'm a good writer. Growth mentality says is not it doesn't care how good you are. It only cares about making your work better.
Right.
And this is crucial, I think, when it comes to criticism, because if you approach criticism with this need that could be, unconscious or almost unconscious, like I need to protect my image of myself as a good writer, then criticism is painful. Mm-hmm. Because you're constantly negotiating, what does it say about me? What does this mean? Where am I on that timeline? But if you try to get to that growth mentality, then a criticism is a gift. Even if you don't agree with it, it points you towards what matters, or it makes you sharpen what you think is right. You go like, oh, no, this is right because X, Y, Z, and I can double down on that. No, it's a whole different issue. But when you adopt that different mentality, it frees you from the need to protect that image, and that lets you grow, that lets you accept criticism, that lets you, toss away that brilliant scene you wrote and write something new instead. It frees you to write a first draft that's bad because you're not worried about being a good writer, you're just worried about getting to this project. It's instrumental, I think, to free yourself from that need. And to go off what you said about Pixar characters learning to accept themselves, I think they also learn to accept their limitations.
Right. And that's also very difficult because the ego does not like that at all, especially when you're younger. Especially when you're younger, you really think like, no, look, I had a conversation with myself. I'm like, I should be at the Oscars by at least 25. And then when 25, I'm like, no, 30. I got to move to LA, and then 30. Okay, well, really like 35, really. And then I actually had clients in my edit suite that turned to me and like, I'll see you at the Oscars next year with this movie. The delusion was so great in their mind that the construct that they've built around that the ego and the image that they had in their head, it was so, they needed it so much. And then that's when fights occur. That's when, conflict happens a lot of times, because if you threaten that image, and it happens in the Pixar movies, Woody literally becomes violent.
Yeah.
He throws him out of the room.
Because if he's not Andy's favorite toy, he has no idea who he is. He doesn't exist.
Right. And it's and I hope us are discussing this, which is Pixar and non-Pixar kind of stuff, but it all works into character, because that is why Pixar's characters and stories touch us so much, because it is as close to the struggle, and all good movies who are written well, it's the struggle that we go through as humans throughout our lives. And when you see that authenticity, you are attracted to it like a moth to a flame. And that's why I feel that Pixar films resonate so much internationally, clearly.
Yeah. I think you talked about pain earlier, and I think that if you want to measure conflict, if you're like, oh, does my script have enough conflict? You need to measure it by how much pain your character is. That's the measuring unit. And to be fair, when I try to think about the difference between Pixar and Disney, right? Why you immediately know when a movie is a Disney movie and when you immediately know it's a Pixar movie, because they're both on the surface similar, right? And like Zootropolis that you mentioned feels a lot more Pixar than Disney.
Oh, absolutely! It's one of their best animated films, in my opinion. Like I love Frozen 2 much more than Frozen 1. I thought Frozen 1 was but it did. Obviously, what do I know? My daughters bought 5 dresses, so they did okay. But Zootopia, Big Hero 6 was also wonderful, but it's very Pixar-ish. Big Hero 6 is very, very Pixar-ish.
And it's not, I'm not even talking about quality. Like, even if you take
story.
Disney's best film, like Lion King is great.
Oh.
It doesn't feel like Pixar. And I think the difference is Disney films are more, and I mean this in the best way possible, they're fairy tales. The characters are archetypes. They're abstracts. They represent something. It's these coming of age. It's family. It's stuff like that. Pixar tries to feel realistic, right? The characters aren't archetypes in that way. They feel like they exist in our world, just in corners we don't see or don't know. But they feel like us. They feel like a workplace. They feel like,
they're not kings and queens other than Brave. And even Brave, you really identify with I forgot her name, but the princess, because she's like oppressed and she wants to get free. Yeah. And then it's also mixing in with relationships with your mother and your parents and all of that stuff. And it's just, and then there's so many layers of that.
Yeah. And to be fair, I love Brave. I think Brave is underappreciated, but it's one of their movies that didn't do as well as the other. Mm-hmm. I always, when she talks to her mother at the end and the sun comes up, I always cry. But I know a lot of people consider it like second tier Pixar, and I think it's partially because of this thing where it feels like 10% more of a fairy tale than Pixar's sort of realistic, adult, complex characters and emotions and issues.
What did you think of the latest Pixar film? I forgot the name of it.
The last one, Onward.
Onward. What did you feel about Onward? Because I saw Onward. Yeah. I liked it, and I could see a lot of, the dad stuff. It's just brutal. Yeah. Like the dad stuff and at the end and all of that stuff. But it didn't resonate like WALL-E. It didn't resonate like Inside Out. But it had its moments. It's better than Good Dinosaur, in my opinion. Yeah. And it's still a quality Pixar film, but it didn't hit exactly, like it's not Coco. So why is that? And that's just my opinion. I don't know what you thought of it.
Well, I'm sort of in the same space as you. I'm a little biased with Onward because my father died when I was very young. So
sure. It connects you different.
But ironically, it made me have the opposite reaction because a lot of times I'm like, oh, that's not the reaction I would have. That's the reaction my mother would have. There's no way I would go meet him without bringing my mother along because I find that just to be like, there's stuff like that made it a little harder for me. But to answer more concisely to your question, I think the lead didn't have a deep enough want or need. Like, yes, he wants to connect with his father, but he didn't have that personality flaw we've been talking about. Like, you see him not being able to talk to the girl at school or not being able to, not having confidence. And that's something we've seen so many times in so many other films.
Correct.
And it works. You like him. You're on the journey. The moment when he goes through the list and realizes it's been his brother is deep and it's profound, right? In what it says about appreciating the family you're with and the people who are there for you. I love that. I have a rush of emotion and tears when that moment happens. But I think the lead character is not as unique, and their flaw isn't as neatly tied to their journey, right? Meeting his father, all this, it doesn't quite tie to the problem he has in the beginning. And I think those things sort of keep it from reaching its full potential. I also think that the world they created, which is fun and funny and interesting, I think it could have been explored further. I think it could have had, again, if you think about Monsters, Inc., right, where you have that neat relationship, like screams run this,
so beautiful. It's so great.
These little assumptions or rules toys love being played with, right, that make the world click.
There wasn't anything like that in that. I don't remember that.
Yeah. It talks about how they lost the magic, and there's some stuff about, him, but it wasn't hammered home, I think. It wasn't.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but it's not. There is that, which is the whole magic, and I lost the magic, and it was. Yeah. You talk about it like it's in its past and stuff, but it's not as powerful as like all toys want to be played with. Everything runs on screams, where then laughter is 10 times or 20 times as good, Yeah. And that twist is. I mean, it's just so. It's remarkable. It's a remarkable way to look at things.